Let me first start off by saying how beautiful you look today and how perfect you already are. So I thought about the idea of what would I talk about, and I talk about the idea of silence, because silence is more than meditation. Really want to be clear about that. It's so much more than meditation. When you do a 10-day retreat like Vipassana, it's 10 days where you're meditating anywhere between 8 and 11 hours a day. When you're meditating, you get to the point where you're in absolute stillness. There's no movement of your body for an hour at a time. Zero movement of your body. And you become still. And that's the easy part. The difficult part is, what are you doing in between the meditations when you're alone with yourself? There's no communication, there's no social media, there's no reading, there's no writing, and you're living with yourself. Who's your biggest critic? Yourself. Whose voice is going to get heard the loudest because there's no distractions? Yourself. You don't need any artificial stimulants. You don't need anything different to come in to bring out that which is desiring to be surfaced. By simply being alone with yourself, your consciousness will bring forth that which is calling it. And so I'm going to talk about several key insights that really came up for me as I went through this process last week. And I'm sharing these not because they were meaningful for me, but I think if I share them, they might provide meaning for you as you look at where your life is and where you want to take your life. The first one is, in order to experience true silence, we must make peace with the past. Remember, we talk about the judgment aspect that comes in, and isn't that what the past is? The past is we're constantly judging ourselves from the past. So for me, during the 10 days, it was like a review of my entire life came in front of me. And as the review of my entire life came in front of me, an event would come up, and it would either be, most of the time when the events come up in this type of situation, they're events that come up from the aspect of fear. Remember, fear is the thing that drives us. We've been taught fear ever since our kids, we were domesticated as children by our parents, by our schools, and by our religions. And when fear comes up, and it comes up and you've got to deal with it, you've got to understand, how do I get rid of the fear? Because if I get rid of the fear, I eliminate the effect of the past. That's when I did the DeMartini method. And when I did the DeMartini method, the event would come up and I would say, this is the event, here was the negative. Where was the positive? Where have I demonstrated that? How's it affected others, both negatively and positively? So when I was done looking at that event, I had done what? I brought it into an equanimous state. I brought it into a balanced state. Once you within your mind bring something into the balanced state, there is no emotional charge and the past no longer owns you. So what happens then? You're free to what? Be silent. But if you're not free, the chatter will just go on and on and on. And you know what that's like. We all do, because we all have that chatter. Intuition only comes in the silence. It is not a voice, but it is a knowing. And I really want to make that clear. A lot of people say, my conscience told me this. I heard these words. I think that's ego. I think that's rationalization. I think that's the human mind thinking. When I find intuition, it's just all of a sudden there's a knowing. It's hard to describe, but all of a sudden you just know this is it. And there's no reason for it. You don't need to justify it. Someone will come to you and say, no, you got to do this, you got to do this. You say, no, I know. And here's the thing about knowing something. When you know something, you never have to justify it to anybody ever. Because here's the thing, you can't. Because everyone has to learn it themselves, and the only way we learn is through experience. You cannot learn how to better self-love without the experience of non-love so that you can now gauge what love could be. We tend to fight the idea of contrast. Contrast is why we're here. Do you get that? We're in the human form to have contrast. So when I think about my life, I don't want to become enlightened. What does enlightened mean? It means I'm always in a state of the divine. I'm always knowing the allness of God. I didn't come here. I came from that into human form, into the sensory experience, to experience life. The key thing is I want to consciously experience life. I want to choose where I engage, what I'm inspired with, what I'm empowered with, what I'm doing with that. I want to choose that for myself. In the silence, you meld into the infinite, and there is no feeling that describes it. There's no feeling. When you are in that purest state of meditation, when everything disappears and you are in quantum physics would say the quantum field, where there's infinite possibilities, when you're in it, there's no chooser. Did you get that? When you're in it, you're back home. You're back in the state in which you came from, which is your natural state that's behind you even as you experience life right now. When you're in it, so there is no feeling. There's no way to describe. That's why in the Jewish language, the word for God, they don't really have one, but they use the word Yahweh to describe God. There are no words that can describe God. Anytime you try to put words to God, the idea of God, and God is not a being, we do not believe in an anthropomorphic being. We do not believe in a God created in human image. We don't believe that. We believe that there is a universal power and presence that is everywhere present, that is all things, completely functioning at all times, individualized as everything, creating and recreating itself in every moment. And you and I and everyone are individualizations and expressions of it, and how we express it is our free choice. No one else can express it for you but you. If you think that someone else has power over you, you don't understand who you are. And the key thing is to begin to understand that you don't need to have anyone else's approval on anything. Did you just hear what I said? You do not need anyone else's approval for anything that you do. I press buttons all the time with the way I interact with my wife. Because sometimes people say, I'm very loving. Sometimes people say, you're really belligerent. You are verbally abusive to your wife. Do you know when I do that, what people are feeling? They're feeling their own insecurity. They're feeling their own issue. Because there's no issue between Jean and I. The issue is your perception of how Jean and I interact. And what it's doing, anytime you're having a judgment like that, that's for you to do your own internal healing. Because the second you're judging on that situation, you're not in love. Couldn't get any clearer than that, is it? The second you judge another human being saying they are right or wrong, you're not accepting that they're in their perfect place and that at this moment, they're right where they need to be. That's really a powerful statement I'm making right here, because I'm asking you to step beyond the illusion you were brought up of what a relationship should be. There is no right way to have a relationship. A relationship is what is agreed upon between two individuals, and only that. And the two individuals can't care what anyone else thinks. When you're in the silence, you can see how everything is an illusion. When you're in the stillness, when you're in the allness, there's nothing. And what you realize when you come out of the allness, your human senses, your human mind, your past experience create a slide or a filter through which life demonstrates in you. And here's the thing. No one in the world will see life the way you see life. Do you hear that? So stop trying to say to people, don't you see this? Don't you understand this? They don't. Because they see life differently, completely differently. And so if everyone sees life differently, here's a great one for you. I got to really demonstrate this. This is Friday. It's day 9. Day 9. I've dealt with a lot of stuff. I'm in nirvana. I am like Jesus Christ on earth. And all of a sudden, the individual who's the dorm manager, who handles all of the physical aspects, your comfort, your facilities, and all that, that's the go-to person. And then they have the spiritual teacher. Well, the dorm manager comes to my door, and he knocks. That's never happened in the prior 7 times. And I answer the door. He says, the teacher would like to see you at 12 o'clock. He wants you to be the first one he sees before he answers questions for the other students. One-on-one. I go, holy crap. What did the mind do? Where would your mind go? It went right to fear. We're programmed for fear, are we not? So the first thing I thought about, my wife died. Something happened to my kids, my grandkid. My brother-in-law, who's close to death, must have died. You see how the mind works? That's the ego coming in. The ego's attached, right? It's bringing in the attached thing. What am I most attached to? First thing that came up was my wife. Second thing came up were my kids, my grandchild, my most attached things. And then I said, well, no, that wouldn't be it. They would have come to me right away. See, I started to go through my process of saying, okay, wait a second, this is not what it is. I got to find out, I got to balance myself. I got to bring myself in. Then I said, well, maybe it's something to do with the fact I'm a minister and I'm not teaching the apostle, I'm teaching other things. And so I just let it be. And I went into stillness and I went into silence. So I went in, I sat down in front of the teacher, Doug, and we had a conversation. He said, I noticed on your form that you filled out that you teach meditation. I said, yes, I do. And he says, what type of meditation? I said, I understand. I don't teach Vipassana because that's your job. And he says, yes, we wanted to make sure because you've signed something saying that we teach it because we are very particular in the way we teach it. I said, I honor that. He says, what type of meditation do you teach? I said, first off, when I teach meditation, the only thing I teach in meditation is to focus on your breath. Most everything else I do is not meditation, it's guided visualization. Everything I've got up on YouTube, it's guided visualization. It's not meditation. Meditation is actually going into the stillness. There's a real difference in that. So I share that with you so that you get that. And so he says, well, I understand. And then he goes this, he says, there's an old student. Now, old student means a student who has taken the course more than once. Does that make sense? Not that you're old like me. Like, I was the second oldest person there. Most everyone was in their early, middle 30s. Everyone was in a beard, with the exception of maybe 5 guys out of 70. It was a blending of Caucasian, African American, Asian, Indian, Arabian, all of those things. So it was a real blending of a beautiful, beautiful community. And he said this to me, he said, an old student has complained that you are staring at them. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. I said, I may be looking like this, and someone could perceive I'm looking at them, but I'm not. And he looked at me and he said, it's probably their past sankhara. Sankhara are those deep feelings that are shoved down in. In other words, they have a perception that people are looking at them, that people are judging them. And so I can get in trouble when I speak. Everyone here knows I can get in trouble when I speak. But if I'm not doing anything, how do you get in trouble when you're not doing anything? I'm saying, and this is a great example because this is where you really have to friggin' just give up. You got to give up trying to please anyone. You got to, because there's no friggin' way. It's a losing battle. Linda, I'm looking at you. I want you to feel real uncomfortable. You see, it's fascinating how we have been so conditioned that we are not enough that we go into such fear, and that response was what? A fear response. Just like I had the fear response when I was called in, right? They had a fear response by someone just staring off into space. So we have to understand that probably 95% of what's going through our ego mind is fear-based and fear-generated. It's not love-based. Good stuff, isn't this? In the silence, when we scan our body for sensations, you realize that there's a whole universe inside of you. This is fantastic. I'm going to walk you through this when I do the visualization after the talk. But when you sit back and you start to scan your body, and you realize that in every part of your body, as you become more aware, you will feel sensations in every part of your body. And there was one point when I was in the meditation, and I felt trillions of sensations in my body. And what I realized was I was a complete universe. This is going to be a very bold statement, but to the 50 to 70 to 100 trillion cells in my body, I was God. I was creating them and everything about how they existed. Do you get that? We talk about the power of the mind, right? We talk about that our mind controls our body. Our mind will cause us to be in homeostasis or will cause us to be in stress. When we're in stress, we're opening ourselves up to what? Dis-ease, whether it's physical or mental. So what's happening is who you are in your mind is affecting 100 trillion cells in your body. Let's take that a step further. What you put into your mouth and you eat with the intention of how you eat is the food that your body and your mind take and recreate your body. And if you start following the sciences, and the sciences will tell you what there's certain things that we eat do to the body: sugar, white processed flour, corn, glucose corn, alcohol. Look at the studies on the brain. The idea that we bought into the illusion. Here's why everything, we talked earlier, everything's an illusion, right? How many people believe that a glass of wine a night makes you healthier? Let me bring it up. Let me share with you about that. That's a few doctors that the wine industry got to tell you that. When you talk to a regular doctor who's a brain scientist who does scans, they will show you the scans of people who drink, and the brains are not normal. They're not healthy. Again, it's a choice. What are you putting into your body? I'm not saying to do it. I'm saying, but you have the power to choose what you put into your body. And you want to know how your body will tell you whether you're putting in the right things? Just feel it. When I was there, I was so aware that I remember that first day they had a spicy dal. Now, I've not had spicy dal in a while. And I said, I probably shouldn't have it, but it looks so good. And you're really hungry because you eat at 6:30 in the morning and you eat at 11 in the morning. And then you go 19 hours and you don't eat. So you are hungry. And I knew not to eat that dal. And there I am in the first meditation, 2 hours. I didn't know if I could sit there and would it be okay if I just pooped my pants. I had gas pains beyond anything you can imagine. And so what did it tell you? Don't eat the spicy dal. Next time the spicy dal was there, guess what? I didn't eat it. Listen to yourself. Your body will tell you, okay? Right now, other than my voice, there's perfect silence. You can't describe that silence, but you know it's there. And this is a state of your natural mind. It's only when the ego comes in that the silence dissipates. I invite you this week to spend just 1 hour being silent with yourself. Doesn't have to be in meditation. Just be silent with yourself with no distractions, no social media, no reading, no writing, no thinking about anything, just being still and being silent. And see what comes up for you to deal with next. Because the silence can be and is our greatest teacher. I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask that you go to our website, agapecsl.com. Once there, click on the donate button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. Or if you would like, text your gift by simply dialing 972-532-6976. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to you in the world. I would ask that if you like this message, to please subscribe to my YouTube channel under my name, Lee Wolak. Again, I want to thank you for joining me in the Agape community as we learn how to better self-love through conscious living.